What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Personality Pick. For this episode, we have another banger of a guest, my man, Connor Burks. How you doing, Connor?
I'm doing good, man. Thanks for having me, brother. I'm excited to be here.
No, thanks for taking the time out of your day. I know it gets busy, and just being able to hop on, it's an honor. Thanks, man.
Of
First of
course.
all, I wanted to give a shout out to the chat, the boys, Tyler, TV Scouting, Chronic Combat. Appreciate y'all. So let's dive right into it, Connor. How did you even get into the MMA space? What led you into, or what piqued your interest with MMA?
All right. So I've said this many times. I used to work at ESPN before working for the MMA Hour. And when the ESPN MMA or the ESPN UFC deal came into place, it kind of put it more into the forefront of my eyes. I'll openly admit I'm not that guy that was watching, Chuck Liddell fights back in the day and, has been was a diehard GSP fan or anything like that. I got into it much later. I'm definitely a newer fan. But once that deal happened, I started watching more and more pay-per-views. I would get them for free when I was working there. And then, with the pay-per-views came the betting. I started doing more and more research and I kind of realized I was like, man, if you really put in the work on these fights, you can find an edge in a lot of these marketplaces. And then, when you start betting and you start winning on fights, it just makes you like it that much more. You start finding out about the fighters' personalities. So it was kind of a slow, meticulous grind. And then when I got the job working with the MMA Hour, that's when it really just went into overdrive of like watching every single fight every single weekend.
That's awesome, dude. And if you don't mind sharing, like how did those conversations go when it came to getting started with the MMA Hour, and what led you into the position you are right now?
Yeah, sure, man. So obviously, Ariel used to work at ESPN as well. That's when I first met him. I used to work at ESPN Radio before pay-per-view shows. Him and DC would sometimes do a show. Sometimes they would do the Ariel Helwani show. He would take live callers. He would have crazy guest lists and stuff, and that also piqued my interest more. So that gave me an introduction to him. I was sort of an associate producer on the show. The main producer left, and I kind of filled into that producer role. It gave me a relationship with him, not a strong one, but he knew who I was. I knew who he was. During the pandemic, things at ESPN weren't that great. I was kind of looking for a way out, looking for a new job. And one of my friends, Troy Farkas, who produces for Ariel on the Ringer Network, called me up and was like, "Hey, man, there's an opening for a show called the MMA Hour. I think you should apply." And things started moving quickly from there. I was living in Connecticut at the time, and then 3 weeks later, I'm living in New York. It was kind of like snap your fingers, and it was a whole new thing.
That's awesome. I'm not sure if you remember. This was sometime in August. Dude, Jamal Hill,
Oh
Thiago.
yeah. Oh, of course I remember. I
You
mean, that is
remember
like
that video?
that is literally like what I love about betting. Like I saw that video, I was like, dude, like y'all are now. Correct me if I'm wrong. Y'all stayed up like either got up really early or stayed up all night for those fights.
Yeah, so for those who don't know, over the summer I went on vacation to see family back home in Lebanon for 2 weeks, and one of the pay-per-views was the Thiago Santos and Jamal Hill fight. And just doing the time conversion, those fights started around 3 in the morning. So we were up from 3 in the morning, and main event time, it was I want to say 7 or 7:30 in the morning, and we're still like wide awake. There's a lot of violence on that card, if I remember correctly. And somehow, like my parents woke up and they're like, "Okay, we'll watch the last like two fights with you guys." And my mom has a knack for just taking videos of things. And so it's me, my two brothers, and my cousin who are up. Like we all bet on the fight. We all bet on Jamal Hill.
Heavy. Y'all went heavy on Jamal Hill.
Yeah, we went heavy on Jamal Hill, and I had him in a bunch of parlays and straights. So I don't know how my mom caught it on video when he finished Santos, and we're just going crazy. I'll have to repost the video on
Oh, you
Twitter.
have to. I mean, I can't watch that enough. First of all, the fact that it was your mom filming it is absolutely fantastic. My mom, when I put on fights, she like has to leave the room. She's like, I can't do these. Like, it's just too much violence. Second of all, like that is what betting is all about for me. Like you're with all your boys, and like I can see y'all are cheering. You can see the finish coming, and then when the finish actually comes, like you'll all go nuts. Like you just cashed a bunch of tickets like that. That's like the dream when you're cashing tickets with your boys, especially when you go heavy like that. Like that's as good as it gets, dude.
Yeah, it was awesome, and my mom was like that at first when she first started watching the fights with us, and every summer she would come visit, and she's like, "You know what? Maybe I want to bet on a fight." And the first fight she bet on, it was Bilal Muhammad. I can't remember who he was facing, but he won that fight. And she was going crazy. She was laughing, happy. I've never seen my mom celebrate so much in my life. And I'm like, okay, mom, you're becoming one of us.
No, that's I mean, my mom, not only would she never place a wager, she would definitely would not place a wager on fighting. So I mean, that is fantastic. And like you can tell it's the morning hour. A couple people have coffee and you guys are like trying to stay quiet while you're going crazy. I mean, it's an all-time video.
Definitely. Now, Connor, we have a question in the chat. Connor, the more you get to know fighters, does it make it easier or harder to bet on them?
Oh my God, it makes it so much easier to bet on them, which can sometimes be my undoing because I will just blindly back a person or just be super biased, even if even if I'm not sold on them winning. So sometimes it can actually be my undoing. But when like we had Dan Hooker in studio last week, and like obviously I was just like, all right, well, this is an auto bet for me. And then just to see him come out and perform like that, I was just like, this is so sick. Like he was just here on Monday and now he's cashing a ticket for me.
Yeah, I could only imagine it might be a little bit easier, but also it does play into the narrative of a little bit of bias just because, oh, you met the person, you've been around them, and you're like, I'm kind of doing a disservice if I don't bet on them or if I bet against them. So I could kind of see how that angle comes. Um,
Yeah, I mean, so like one example is Steamroller. Matt Frevol is like pretty big on MMA Twitter now, and so like last week, I was nervous about that matchup for him, so I didn't bet on him. I just bet on the under 2.5, and then I regretted not betting on him when he obviously got the knockout. Like he cashed the under for me, but I still was just like I should have just rode with him. Like it's just so much cooler when you ride with those guys.
100%. And I mean, obviously, you still cashed the bet, so it's a
Yeah,
win-win
it's a
situation
win-win
there.
for sure.
You obviously want the dog money though. Connor, have you ever trained?
I haven't, dude. But actually, the more I'm around this, the more I've started considering it. I've really thought about potentially going to like a jujitsu gym, or even just like something as simple as boxing classes. It's definitely piqued my interest, and like not just on the fact that I really want to know what it's like to be on the side of training, but also just like everything that comes with it, like the self defense factor, the confidence factor. It feels like anyone that I've known that's ever trained, it's always everyone speaks just like preaches about how fantastic it is.
Yeah, I for one encourage it. It's
I've
really
seen I've seen your pictures like of you training. I think that's incredible, man.
it's really fun, and when you're in the space and when you're so involved, it helps you understand what these fighters go through that much more. And when you're watching these events, whether UFC, PFL, Bellator, could be any of these events, it helps you understand the mindset the fighter goes through inside the cage too. Because during sparring sessions, yeah, it's not as serious, but you're still getting hit. Like,
For
you
sure.
still have to deal with the strikes being thrown at you. So when I see a lot of, I'm not gonna call them casuals, but people that watch but don't train, they start commenting like, "Oh, why don't you just do this? Why don't you just throw a right hook to his face?" It really isn't that easy.
Dude, I couldn't agree with you more, man. Like I I try to not like really do those negative critiques too much because I know that I don't know what I'm talking about. Like one, I've only been watching the sport for so long, and two, I've never been in their situation. Like like I have the utmost respect for you for training, getting in those sparring sessions. Them getting in the octagon, that's like a whole I can't even imagine what it's like making that walk in front of tens of thousands of people, millions more watching at home. Like the mindset of these guys is so incredible to me.
Yeah, it's that much more pressure just walking into a cage. I've done like a couple of like small fights here and there, but nothing to that caliber.
I mean, you're still doing it though. You're still doing it though, man. What all practices have you trained in?
So I just started jujitsu. I want to say 2 months ago. So I'm still a white belt, but kickboxing and Muay Thai has been for years, dude. Like I want to say 5 to 6 years of kickboxing and Muay Thai.
That's awesome, dude.
Yeah,
That's
I've been around that whole realm for a good amount of my life. Even when I was younger, my friends were big MMA fighters back home in the Middle East. So I would be in the training room. I would see them walk out. One of them was the GFC champion at bantamweight for 135. So I kind of I think that's how I got really into training side of things.
That's awesome, man. I mean, if you had like a takeaway or like a positive impact that it's had on your life that you can point to, like what would you say?
The training or being around people that are in that position of competing.
Both. I guess one comes with the other as well. So I guess just both.
So both of them. Okay. The just being around people that go into the ring and people that are successful at it kind of preach to me the aspect of hard work and persistence. Just going after what you want, no matter the setbacks, no matter all the injuries or heartbreaks that you go through in life. And then training myself, it built a lot of resilience. It's easy to look for a way out when you're in the even if you're just sparring. Like it's easy to be like, oh, I'm out of breath. We'll go again next week or something like that. But just staying resilient and standing your ground is the key takeaway for me.
I mean, I love the thought of that. I mean, the resiliency. So there's sometimes where I'm just in the gym doing, normal like workout sessions, and I can't even remember the last time that I worked out with someone just because of where I live and because my gym is within my apartment. It's not like I'm having people come over and working out with me. The amount of times where I'm like maybe doing like a sprint at the end of the workout, and I'm like, all right, let's go a half mile, and then I start sprinting, and I'm like, all right, maybe we'll just do like point 0.3, like point 0.4, and then like I have to like sometimes I give in and like sometimes I'm like, nah, nah, nah. Like you got to hold yourself accountable. Like I feel like in these training circles, like having other people to hold you accountable to this hard work, uh, I mean, has to just be an amazing process. And I love that you mentioned the hard work thing because I feel like I notice a ton of fighters. Like I feel like it's like 95% of fighters is just like hard work is what has got me to where I am.
100%, 100%. Now, do you remember the first fight you've ever watched, whether it's in person or
Oh
just on
man.
TV?
I mean, probably. I mean, I obviously watched like McGregor Aldo. It was like back in those like mid teens days. I was watching like these huge ones, like the Holly Holm, Ronda Rousey. Like those are like my first memories of like watching UFC. But like the one that like really really sticks with me, where I was like hyped for like weeks on end for it, was Conor Khabib. I feel like that's where like quite a few people were introed into the sport. Um, but yeah, I would go like the McGregor Aldos, the Ronda Rousey versus Holly Holm were like my early memories of it.
All right, and then a follow-up to that question, do you have a favorite fighter or a favorite fight that you've watched? Recent
Man,
memory or it's all time?
oh man, I mean, recent memory. That Yuri Glover fight was just so fantastic. Like that is like one of like the all-time fights. Just like the Leon and the Pereira fight just this past weekend. Like those are amazing like comeback stories and like incredible finishes and everything. But like that Yuri Glover was just so back and forth, and like just the to get that choke in that late in the game is just I mean, it was just unbelievable. Volkanovski versus Ortega last year, like I was literally pacing around my apartment. I mean, that was just like such an alt. Like when Ortega had the triangle locked in and like Volk's face is turning like purple. I've never been so on the edge of my seat because Volk is one of my favorite fighters. I mean, you mentioned favorite fighters. I love Volk. I got a soft spot for a lot of those dudes down under. Like love Ty, love Kai Kara France, love Izzy, love Jack Della Maddalena fighting this weekend. Like I like a lot of those Australian dudes, but I don't know, man. Like, there's no fighters I dislike really. So, like, I feel like you can pull from every fighter. Like I love the ones with big personalities. Like, I love how Sean O'Malley is a showman. Like, I love that part of his
Mhm.
game. I mean, I love Piotr Jan. I mean, he's just a murderer in there. I love Islam Makhachev. Like, just like his story and everything. I could go on for days of fighters that I like because the list is like endless.
Yeah, nowadays it's just hard to draw between fighters just because there's so many talented people in every single division. It's for me, I have to pick one in each division. It's that
Yeah,
hard.
and dude, and that's tough. To pick one in each division is like, I mean, God, it's almost impossible. Like for me, I have a hard time choosing between like Izzy and Whitaker, two guys that have fought before, but like I just love both their personalities.
Yeah, no, 100%. And just looking at the talent that's developed over the past couple of years in the UFC and the way the UFC has transformed from a sport that was mainly specialty combat where you would see, like back in the day, you would see wrestler versus striker or jiu-jitsu guy versus wrestler, to now where almost every fighter is well-rounded and they can hold their own in each and every facet of martial arts. That's what's fascinating to me. It's come a long way, and I think that's what's increased the popularity, A, and then B, the just being mainstream amongst the crowd, taking over boxing, going above boxing in the level of being watched more.
Yeah. I mean,
Nowadays.
dude, if you look over my shoulder right here, like I have the first poster from the first UFC, and like it has the 8 different martial arts listed that like went that night. It was like they were trying to find like what is the ultimate martial art at the first one. And now like every guy has to be well rounded in there. And I'm with you on the mainstream thing. Like I feel like everyone loves like a big fight night. Like even casual fans like can get into a big fight night, and where I felt like, for decades up until this like massive rise in the UFC, it's always been the big boxing like fights. It's like, oh, Tyson's fighting tonight. Like even you'll get, you know, 55-year-old women in Iowa watching a Tyson fight just because it feels so big. And I feel like sometimes with these UFC fights, like if it's a huge UFC fight night, like you'll get eyes that would never watch it before on it. I feel like it's somewhat eclipsed boxing in those huge fight night feels.
I completely agree. And boxing was once the sport that was held to a really high pedigree, and it still is. But nowadays, you kind of feel like there's a little bit of the YouTuber boxing where people aren't as interested, and just that ruining the game, or just straight up. I'm not even going to say it, but I mean, fight fixing that's happened, just being paid
And
off.
weird matchmaking, man. Like
Yeah,
sometimes the matchmaking, you're not seeing the best guys fight the best guys, which is sometimes what I take the most issue with. Like I want to see the best guys fight the best guys with the most stakes possible. Like that is what makes it so much fun. Israel Adesanya versus Alex Pereira for the UFC middleweight title. Like the belt is on the line. Like that gets me going. Like storyline, stakes, incredible talents. That's what gets me going. Not Tyson Fury fighting Chisora for the third time. Like it's like things like that don't really do it for me. Even though I I think Ryan Garcia versus Tank has just recently got announced. Like
that's got
that's an
announced.
example of like a great fight.
Yeah, going back to fights like that is where I think that would bring boxing back up to what it was. And that fight being announced, I think, is going to be the start of better matchmaking. At least I hope so, because a lot of people have been wanting that fight for so long, and for it to finally happen and they
It'd be
signed it on the
amazing.
line, it's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, like it feels like a lot of people say it, but it's like sometimes it feels like boxing. They try to protect the O's too much. Like they want to stay undefeated and they want to just build up that record as much as they can before they get to those prize fights.
Definitely, definitely. And if you talking about Pereira had me remembering when I was in Lebanon to for on vacation, I met Pereira there.
Oh
And
shit!
it was the most random thing in the world, and it's gonna sound really dumb, but we were down the street from this, like, little shopping center that he was at, and I'm like, "Well, there's no way Alex Pereira is here in Lebanon, like, out of everywhere in the world." And I'm checking his Instagram stories, I'm like, "Really?" So we recognize where he's at, and we just start there. I know it sounds super, like, stalker-like, but dude, it's one of my favorite fighters in the world. I've been following him since
You're
kick.
in Lebanon, dude, and he happens to be there, and you're within a distance to go meet him. I take no blame in that, dude.
It was ridiculous. Like, the guy is, you look at him and you're looking up, you don't see people like him randomly on the street, like, or ever in life,
Right.
I feel.
Like, what was his presence like? Like, is he an intimidating presence when you first meet
Oh,
him?
absolutely,
I can only
absolutely.
imagine.
I I faced off with him for a picture, and I was about to shit my pants, like, it was
Uh, I can only imagine, like, especially I don't know if you speak Portuguese, but I imagine the language barrier just makes it all the more intimidating. Like, he just like he can't just be like, "Hey, what's up, man? Like, nice to meet you." Like, he's just kind of staring at you.
Exactly, exactly. His friend was translating to him, and he understood a little bit of Spanish, so my brother was speaking to him in Spanish, and for some odd reason, my brother asked him about girls, and
I mean, that's such an insane story. That's incredible. I mean, and it's cool that he was willing to do like the face off picture with you.
Yeah, most fighters, I don't think they would do that.
Yeah,
Cool. So last segment of the show, I'm gonna pull up the fights for this weekend. We're gonna do a rapid fire pick 'em,
let's
and
do it, man.
you could give a method, you can give just the name, round, whatever you want. So starting off with the first fight of the night, we have Natalia Silva against Teresa Bleda. Who you got?
Give me Blada based on the size advantage.
Okay, I like it. Fernie Garcia against Brady Heistan.
I'll go Brady high stand.
All right. Maria Oliveira against Vanessa Demopoulos.
Oh man, tough to trust someone with the reach of Vanessa Demopoulos, but I'm gonna go with Demopoulos.
Okay. Ricky Tercios against Kevin Natividad.
Ricky Tercios, even though I could never put money on him again, I had money on him last time out when he had 11% significant strike accuracy. It's going to take a while for me to earn trust again with him.
But it's Kevin Natividad. Like, no
I
disrespect
know.
to the
That's
name.
the thing. That's the thing. That's like I considered making a play on Ricky Tercios this week, and that was the only reason because of his opponent. And I was just like, I just can't do it again. Like if it gets halfway through round one and he's landed 2 significant strikes on 180 attempts, like I'm gonna pull my hair out.
I don't blame you. Next up, we have Miles Johns against Vince Morales.
Oh man, give me Vince Morales as a dog.
Okay. Do you think he's able to negate the wrestling?
I honestly, I can't say with any confidence. If you want me to pull back the curtain, I have 0 straight money line plays this week, and I think that's like the first time that's ever happened. I like it. I'm not a huge fan of this card from a betting perspective.
Yeah, I think a lot of people share that same view of this card. Jennifer Maya against Marina Moroz.
Oh man, give me Marina Moroz though. At her price, I don't love it.
Yeah, it's tough to back someone like Marina Moroz at minus 170 against someone who has really good jiu-jitsu. We got Zalgas Zimagulov against Charles Johnson.
Give me Charles Johnson. I think he bounced back from the Makhayev fight.
See, I like Charles Johnson in this fight, and I think a lot of people are discounting him after that Mukayev fight. So I
I mean,
think
he's
that's
fighting one of the best in the world. I think he's going to bounce back in a big way here. And I mean, Sumagulov 1-4 in his last 5. It'd be tough to trust him with my money as well.
I agree. Next up, we have Jack Della Maddalena against Danny Roberts.
JDM all day, all day. I'm riding him heavy.
Yeah,
Obviously, I mean he's the biggest favorite on the card. I'm not really doing anything crazy by saying that, but I really like him as a prospect.
this fight's going to be really interesting to watch. Muslim Salikov against Andre Fiallo.
Man,
Both fighters coming off of a knockout loss.
I was gonna say, I was actually at that one, Salikov Leach. I'm gonna say Salikov comes out a little more timid after getting his first career knockout, and Andre Fiallo is just a man of chaos, and he comes to swing and bang whether he's coming off a knockout or not, and he brings the pressure, and he finds the shot on Muslim Salikov.
I like where you're leaning there. Chase Sherman against Waldo Cortez Acosta. This is the
Man,
fight with the best nicknames. Just putting that out there. Chase
bet
Vanilla Gorilla Sherman against Waldo the Salsa Boy Cortez Acosta.
I mean, as good as it gets. Salsa Boy doing the dance after beating Jared Vanderaa just a few weeks ago. Legs got absolutely chopped into oblivion by Jared Vanderaa. I wonder if they're okay just a few weeks later. Chase Sherman maybe use the leg kicks, rack up the points over the 3 rounds. I'm riding the over 1.5 on this. It's going to be an electric bet just because they're probably just going to stand and trade the entire time. But I'll go Chase Sherman. I think that Waldo Cortez Acosta is going to catch an L soon. I think he's going to lose his O sooner rather than later. I'm not 100% sure it's going to be here, but I'll side with Chase Sherman not confidently.
Yeah, I can't blame you. You can't really be confident when you're betting on a Chase Sherman if you ever decide to lay money on this guy.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing with this card. So like I've really started noticing with these Apex cards, especially this fall. I feel like they're a little bit higher quality in the summer and the springtime. I'm kind of feeling like the non-pay-per-view cards would be like the UFC off season because they're competing with football in America and everything. So they have to meet the ESPN contract obligations. I feel like they sort of phone these cards in a little bit more on the matchmaking side. And I have just noticed, like, I'll get halfway through these cards and I'm like, why did I trust XYZ with my money? Like, why did I do that? Like, if you put him on a real card or on a pay-per-view card, I would have never trusted him with my money. I would have just stayed away.
Yeah, because a lot of these fighters fall under the pressure, so the apex is just the perfect spot for him.
Oh my God, yes. And sometimes they just aren't consistent with the way that they fight.
Hmm. That too, and they're too green. Co-main event, we have Iwan Kutalaba against Kennedy and Nzechukwu.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about a guy not consistent with the way he fights.
Mhm.
Kutalaba, are you going to get the world beater? Or are you going to get, the man that you really cannot trust with your money? Just based on the gigantic size advantage of Kennedy, I'll ride with him.
Yeah, I have to go with the under 1.5 here. Kutalaba just brings the heat
I mean,
every single fight.
I was gonna say you can't really complain. Like he's a man of chaos. Like he comes in here and makes things crazy. So I am also there. I put the fight does not go to a decision in a little violence parlay. Parlayed it up with the main event doesn't go and Jack Della under 2.5.
Oh yeah, that I think that's solid. Main event: Derek Lewis against Sergey Spivak.
Again, not the most confident pick in the world, but give me Derek Lewis, Black Beast, little bounce
Ooh,
back action, KO, TKO. We'll go late into round one. I see a lot of people on Spivak this week, and I can't really blame him. I mean, he's been looking great of late. There is the clear path to victory. Take him down, ground and pound him out, go for the submission, do something like that. Here's my argument that I'm going to make for Derek Lewis. Spivak, all three knockouts in the UFC are by ground and pound. He's not like the biggest, just like ice you on the feet kind of hitter. So I'm just gonna throw caution in the wind and hope that Derek Lewis comes in, swang and bang mentality, can stuff a takedown or two and catch Spivak. Because I hate to say it, if he catches an L in this one, I you really have to question where Derek Lewis's career goes from here. Because the last few outings have not been great. I took Derek Lewis plus 230 by KO strictly just because of the number. I think he's a plus 165 dog. I would have thought he was going to be like plus 170 by knockout. I feel like that is like essentially the only way he's going to win. So with the differential in the number, I did throw a half unit on it. If it loses, I will be not shocked at all.
watch him come out this fight and get a submission.
I do. That would be absolutely insane. I mean, I can't fathom that because I mean Spivak obviously has the massive advantage on the ground.
100%. And we heard Derek Lewis come out to the media and say how the losses have been affecting him and how he feels like he's in the hot seat. So I think we see a different Derek Lewis this weekend, a little bit more motivated just to try and keep his job because he feels like if he loses this fight, he's going to get cut, which I
Yeah,
don't agree with.
I mean, yeah, dude. I don't agree with that either, just because of like the legend of Derek Lewis at this point. Like he's still main eventing fight nights and whatnot, and you can always sell him on a pay per view card. I mean, just the sheer amount of knockouts that he's had and the personality that he carries. I doubt they're going to cut him. I just couldn't see that. But I mean, you lose this fight. I don't imagine Derek Lewis will ever get back into the title picture, but this would put a firm stamp on it, both in our minds and in his, if he were to lose this fight. I mean, you'll never be in title
He'll never.
contention again. And, you really will have to wonder where his career goes from here with a loss.
Yeah, for me, it's always been weird how he always loses in his hometown in Texas. I think that's also an extra toll on him mentally, just losing in front of his home crowd. That does it to fighters. It's if you're losing in front of your friends and family constantly, time after time. How does that make you feel? A day, 2 days, 3 days after the fight, going into the
I
next
can't,
training camp.
I can't even imagine, man. Like it has to take such a toll. I mean, I hope that he can bounce back here. I think he said, "Why is he going to win the fight?" And he was like, "Because it's not in Texas."
Yeah, I just want the epic post fight interview. That's what I'm waiting for.
I
That's why I
mean,
want him to win.
it's a guarantee. It's a guarantee. That's another thing is, I'm willing to put a half unit down on a smaller level Apex card, just because I want to cheer. Who doesn't want to cheer for a Black Beast KO? Like you get the celebration, you get the post fight. Maybe a lucky fan gets to catch a cup in the crowd. So yeah, I mean, this weekend, if I have a winning week, it's a fantastic thing. A smarter man would have gone much tighter than I did this week. Maybe just put one or two bets down. But the good news is I'm not a smart man. I'm here for a good time, not a long time.
A man for the people. Connor, tell the people where they can find you and what you have going on.
Yeah, man. I mean, MMA Hour, obviously tune in. MMA Fighting YouTube channel Mondays and Wednesdays at 1 o'clock Eastern. I also do No Bets Barred, a betting podcast. We started doing watch alongs for every pay per views on MMA Fighting. And then just one last plug. You see the mustache, Movember. Last year I raised $1,300. If you want to donate, all the links are in my bios on all my socials. So yeah, if you feel like donating a few dollars to a good cause to help with men's mental health and men's cancers, I would much appreciate it. And thank you for having me, man. I really appreciate it. It's great to talk to you face to face.
100%. And I appreciate you coming on and taking the time. It means a lot. And just being someone who watches the MMA Hour so much, seeing you on there, it's a dream come true for me.
Well, damn, man, I appreciate you watching, dude, and I appreciate you saying that for real. That's really nice of you to say, and I appreciate the hell out of it.
Cool. And guys, we're almost at 100 subscribers. If you can go down and hit the subscribe button, like and comment on this video, I'd really appreciate it. Until next week, another fighter. Peace.